Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and today I'm going to give you my first thoughts on the Dissidia NT Final Fantasy Beta. This video is going to be a little bit different from normal. This is not going to be my highly edited reviews or first impressions. This is going to be more freeform. I want to try to cover more games. I want to try to cover more games that are worth your time. And with the formats of Hollow Knight, Blaster Master Zero, those bigger reviews, the thing is that takes a while. I love the reviews that I put out, but I want to cover more games. So I want to experiment with this, try it a little bit, and this seemed like the best game to do it with, because it's a beta. So Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, or Dissidia NT Final Fantasy, I've seen people call it different things, and I'm just going to refer to it as Dissidia NT going forward in this video. Now, it's based on a fighting game for the PSP, the original Dissidia, which is based on Final Fantasy characters in a more open-world fighting environment. I liked Dissidia for the PSP. In fact, I would go as far to say I loved it. I put thousands of hours into that game. And quite honestly, that is a little bit different than the norm for me. I like playing a lot of games, and I do usually play one or two games a lot even while I'm playing other games. Right now, that would be Overwatch, even though I'm struggling with understanding the Mercy changes, but that's a topic for another day. The games that I spent a lot of time on usually fall into a couple of genres: the Metroidvania genre, the RPG genre, the FPS genre. Rarely is it a fighting game. In fact, Dissidia and Skullgirls are pretty much the only two fighting games that I've spent significant time on. So when I heard the announcement about this game, I was excited. And then I started to see the trailer and the different kind of combat that the trailer showed off, and I was like, this game is Dissidia, but it feels completely different. And after playing the beta, I can say assuredly that is the case. The core of Dissidia is here, but with the 3v3 mechanic, it feels completely different, especially because you may be relying on two other players that you may have no idea who they are if you're going online. But let's get back to the basics first here. So it is a 3-on-3 battle, and your job is simple: knock out the opponent characters 3 times. Now, it could be all 3 once, or just one hero all 3 times. Basically, the first of 3 wins, or the time limit runs out. And it's usually a 4-minute time limit, at least in the beta. Now, in terms of combat, you have 3 basic attacks in the air and 3 basic attacks on the ground. You have an up attack, a down attack, and a medium attack, but based on the original game, you can customize it to your own appeal. Sometimes it'll be magic, sometimes it'll be physical, sometimes it could be a buff of sorts, but you have these abilities that you can activate based on simple commands. Now, the thing with the beta is that you don't have the customization portion, and I'm not sure if the customization portion is going to be in the end product. I'm pretty sure it is based on what I'm reading, but the fact that they didn't have it here was a little bit off-putting, especially for the character that I mained in the original Dissidia, Zidane. There was a specific down attack that I loved in the original Dissidia, and the fact that I couldn't use it here really sort of irritated me. Now, those attacks attack something called Bravery. In the middle of the screen there, you see that 2527 number. That is my Bravery value. If I get hit, the Bravery goes down. If I hit an enemy, the Bravery goes up. That Bravery is used for one purpose: taking out your opponent's HP. As you'll notice under the 2502 there, I've got a health bar of 3500. That Bravery, if I successfully land an HP attack, it will reduce the 2044 to 0 and take that value and decrease the enemy's HP. With me so far? Okay, when you do a successful HP attack, the thing is that your Bravery value will reduce back to 0. Now, that's important because if your Bravery is at 0 and somebody hits you, then you will be broken. And being broken is a bad thing, because that means somebody just gained a shit ton of Bravery off of you. Being broken is something you want to avoid at all costs. And the thing is, especially in this game where you've got so much going on, You have to keep in mind when you're attacking, and if you do an HP attack, maybe you retreat for a little bit, because you do have the mobility thanks to the dash abilities that are in this game. You'll see that stamina bar over the 2148. That's my stamina, and I can dash as long as I have stamina in that bar, and you have a significant amount of it at the start. Now, one of the reasons I love the fighting in Dissidia is the fact that each character is unique. And I'm not talking about uniqueness like you see in Street Fighter. Yes, each character in Street Fighter can be unique in certain ways, despite having some clones of each other. But the thing is that when it comes down to it, you've got characters that come into categories. Grapplers like Zangief, zoning characters like Ryu has been a couple of times, so on and so forth. When it comes to Dissidia, you do have those categories, but those categories have a wide berth in terms of differences within those categories. You have assassins, you have magicians, you have characters that all fall into a category, but Zidane, for example, is a hell of a lot different than Squall. Terra is a lot different than the Emperor. Terra's gonna go at you with magic and be a little bit more offensive, while the Emperor is gonna be defensive. He's gonna set traps. He wants you to come to you, and then he's gonna try to hit you with a major attack, and you'll have to try to get through those traps. Which means that fighting each character, you're gonna have to adjust your strategy based on the character you're fighting. You're gonna have to adjust based on who you're fighting. Now here I'm playing as Zidane, and he was my main in the original Dissidia, and he's changed a little bit. In the original Dissidia, he was more of an aerial fighter, but here he's more focused on speed more than anything else. He can still fight on the ground, which in the original he was able to do, but it was just so much different compared to his aerial abilities in the original Dissidia. He also has the ability to steal parameter stats and bravery from his opponents, which is a nice little touch considering his backstory. You do get some really unique characters like Onion Knight, who's able to change classes in the middle of battle, changing his fighting style, and he actually may be a bit overpowered in my opinion because of that, although his attacks do seem to have a little less attack power at their base value. The thing is, he's so flexible. Now, one of the qualms I had going into this version of Dissidia was the idea of the 3v3 mechanic. I like the 1v1. I like the fact that it was a 1v1 battle. Yes, it's basic fighting mechanics, but because of the range of the arena, because of all the different ways that you could approach your opponent, it felt very unique. The 3v3 mechanic actually adds to the fighting style, and I'm very surprised by that. Because of the free-range nature of this fighting, you have to pay attention to everything around you, and just focusing on one enemy and trying to knock him down will probably get you in a lot of trouble, especially against higher-level opponents. This adds something that the original Dissidia had in the fact that fights feel a lot more dynamic. In the original Dissidia, yeah, you did have dynamic fights. You would have to adjust to your opponent, and sometimes you would have these situations where things would go back and forth. But a good amount of the time, you would get into this sort of rhythm where you would get a certain attack off, you would focus on that attack because the enemy AI wasn't exactly dealing with it very well, or your opponent wasn't dealing with it very well, and it just felt like you were doing the same thing over and over and over again. Here, the fact is, if things are going wrong, if things are, let's say I'm having problems against Cecil here like I have, then maybe I need to adjust. Maybe I need to change to another person and focus on them. Maybe I go and focus on someone else for the time being, try to get a little bit of bravery back while they're distracted with another fighter, then go right back to Cecil. I've got to be careful though, because if I keep on going after people, people will come after me. You'll notice here that I had 2 lines on me. That means there are 2 enemies that were focusing on me at that very point. If I've got somebody chasing me, they have a distinct advantage, because if I'm chasing someone else, my attention is on them. And the way that the zooming and the lock-on mechanics work here, it's hard to move around and see the person chasing you. You're sort of at a loss in terms of where they may be coming from in terms of predictions. Yeah, you got that line there, but that line only gives you somewhat of the information because of the variety of attacks that could be coming your way. They could be coming from the top, the bottom, they could be delayed, they could be fire spells. So you've got to be careful about chasing other opponents, but if you do get the advantage over them, then all of a sudden, boom, you are just perfect to be able to deal some major damage. What sold this beta for me in terms of my enjoyment of it was those base mechanics. Everything from the Dissidia franchise still feels here. It still feels like, hey, guess what? Yeah, they've changed it to 3v3. Yeah, they've made it a little bit different in terms of how you knock out your opponent. But at the core, the fighting's the same. At the core, even though you've got now these new abilities, you'll notice on the bottom left there, they're the triangle buttons, and they will activate certain special abilities. For like Zidane, for example, it will activate his trance ability, which makes him a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful, almost like going Super Saiyan. There are some changes that I really enjoy here too. In the original game, there were summons, and they were basically activated via a button press. And they were pretty substantial at times. They could really change the landscape of the fight. But it really didn't take a lot to actually activate them. Here you gotta take some time and actually stand still and summon your, well, like for example here, Odin. Now, what's nice about this is that it takes about, I want to say 12 seconds for you to activate your summon, but if all of your teammates are trying to activate the summon at once, then it will take a lot less time. It's basically going to a global energy meter. This adds to the strategy. Maybe one of you just go off and try to start the summon, and the other two protect him at that point. That is a legitimate strategy here, because guess what? You've got to protect them because they are sitting ducks when they're summoning. You can't attack, you can't do anything, and if you're hit, you lose that summon ability in terms of the power that you've gained. So you've got to be careful when you start to summon things. Alright, I've said a lot of positives about the beta, and I still have more to say, but let's go to the other side. What was wrong with this beta? Well, I'm not exactly sure who it was targeting in terms of the people to get interested in this game. For newbies to the Dissidia franchise, there is a lot to take in here, and yes, there is a tutorial that puts a bunch of information on the screen, but in the original game, it really taught you. It really took the time to say, okay, here's an HP attack, here's a bravery attack, this is what you need to know. Somebody coming into this and not knowing these mechanics are going to get confused, and especially with the fact that everything's so open. There is so many strategies, there's so many ways that you can take down your opponent, and it may be information overload. So not having that proper tutorial is going to be a problem in terms of the beta. I'm not sure people who would be interested in this and then try the beta would want to actually purchase the regular game if they aren't a fan of the franchise to begin with. But veterans of the series may be off-put by the lack of customization in this beta. Now that may sound ridiculous. It's a beta. You're only going to give a certain amount of abilities and a certain amount of information so that you can keep to a core set of mechanics so that you can test, against the beta. You want to make sure that those things are up to snuff, then you add it later. But the thing is that is something that was really unique about Dissidia. You could really customize your character down to his major abilities that would really customize the fighter in question. And the lack of customization here, especially with some of the choices they made in terms of the main sets, like Zidane for example, it just didn't make a lot of sense with the combinations of skills that they chose for the character. It just didn't work in terms of their synergy, unlike what you could get out of the original Dissidia. In addition, one of the things that I really did not enjoy about this beta was the AI. Now, in the original Dissidia, you had your levels, your very easy, medium, hard, so on and so forth. You don't have the choices in the beta for this, and they've seemingly chosen easy or normal difficulty here, which, let me be frank, any veteran of the genre or veteran of this series is going to be off-put by that, because it's just like, okay, I may not even know the full controls that you found at this point, and I may not even know the character that I'm playing as in terms of his new abilities, like with Warrior of Light here, but it's still very, very easy. I have no problems defeating any AI in this game, even though he's kicking my ass right here. Yeah, sure, he's kicking my ass, but he never gets the final attack on me, and frankly, it's not a challenge. Why they didn't add the difficulty levels for veterans of the genre to test that higher level AI, that I won't understand. In addition, the UI. I don't know what to talk about. There are some good things with this UI, don't get me wrong. I like the line that targets the opponent, how it doesn't necessarily go straight at him. It's more of an arc so that you can see it, but it's not necessarily entirely in your line of sight or in the way of your attacks. But with that said, just look at this screen. Look how much of the UI takes up the screen. It takes up a good 40-50% of it. That's a lot of information, and yes, there is a lot of information that you need to know about this game, but like the character portraits, for example, especially yours. Why is it so big? I know I'm playing as the Warrior Light. I know that I'm playing it as that. Why is he so prominent on that bottom left, and why is it there? Why are the 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the bottom right there? They're just extra information. If I want to say something during battle, let me figure it out on my own. Let me try pressing the buttons, and don't put those prompts there because it just adds to the clutter on the screen. What really makes it worse is the fact that it sort of obfuscates very, very important information. You'll notice 2 lightning, for example, in the bottom right there. There's a 1 and 2 there. That means that number 1 and number 2, aka Warrior Light, and I think it's My Lightning, are targeting that person. That's sort of important information to know. And you may need to rescue one of your compadres because, hey, guess what? They're getting their ass kicked and they're about to be incapacitated and you only have a certain amount of lives. Go and save them. Maybe I use my bravery share to give them a little bit of health because I know that everyone's targeting them. The fact that it's so small and it's very hard to see, yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense compared to everything else. Compared to the summons, for example, look at that top left, and that's the number of lives with the blue and red, and the summon bars. They're huge compared to everything else, and I'm not exactly sure why. Why do you need that, blue bar and that red bar in terms of the number of lives? Why just not a number count? That would take a lot of the area off the screen in terms of what's going on here. I want the developers to step back here a little bit and say, is all this information needed? Do I really need all this on the screen? How can I make it simpler? You see, that's the weird thing about a game like this in terms of the beta. Yes, that is useful information for them in terms of being able to say, is this working rather well? I don't know. Maybe the UI isn't working. And again, the focus on the base mechanics I like. But Dissidia was one of those games that really got a cult following per se, and I don't want to say it was a huge cult following, but the people who played it all the time, like myself, were dedicated to it. And I feel like those are the people that would really give you a lot more of the information that you would want, but you've sort of blocked them off in terms of what they really liked about the series, the customization, the RPG mechanic portion, so that you could really customize your character. And without that there, they can't give you that feedback on, hey, is this balanced? Is there one character that's way too overpowered right now? So I question a little bit of why this beta exists in that sense. I also want to talk about the netcode a little bit. I played on a wireless connection, and yeah, that is a little bit strange. Okay, it's a fighting game, you'd want an Ethernet connection, you would want the best connection that you could possibly have, but I sort of wanted to test how well it was able to deal with some of the, hiccups that could happen in terms of the wireless portion. For the most part, it was good, with the exception of when it did stutter, it was really, really off-putting, because the game sort of freezes. It doesn't really slow down. It just sort of stands there for a second and then recovers. And that can be a little bit jarring. Now, my experience was for the most part positive. I have heard rumblings that a lot of people did have issues with the implementation and they thought that it had a bit of problems. I myself didn't experience that, but again, I would advise you to go take a listen to those other people. And again, this is a beta for a reason. Even though it is out in the arcades, or at least a version of it is out in the arcades, you have to understand that, hey, guess what? This is a beta, they are going to refine it, they are going to tune it, and it could be good by the time it goes out to release. I do want you to keep in mind, though, that I am mostly a single-player person, and even with the original Dissidia, yeah, I played with other people from time to time, but a lot of my time was spent in the single-player portion, especially in the gauntlet-type arena where you would have to build up your character, and you sort of, challenge yourself in those modes. So I would advise that, hey, guess what? Maybe look at other people's for their opinion on the actual multiplayer portion of it, at least in the connection portion. I wish there were more options in the beta in terms of customizing the matches too, because the thing was that a lot of the funnest matches, I know funnest, but a lot of the great matches that I had online ended in draws, which was really, really annoying. The thing is that there is a point system like you saw in some of the results screens earlier, but there was something unfulfilling when you won or lost on those screens. It felt like the battle should have continued. Like, you guys may have gotten the win if it just had another 30 seconds. And I feel like they need to sort of tweak the time restrictions here. Because, yeah, games can end really quickly if you start beating down your opponent. But when you get into these wonderful matches where everyone is really giving everyone else a challenge, then it can be really exhilarating. You can really want to play this game for hours on end if you just have one of those matches within those hours, because it will feel like you really are the key to your team's victory or vice versa. I will be interested to see if they have another beta. If they come back and say, okay, maybe we need to adjust a couple things. Maybe we add a couple more heroes, like maybe somebody from the villain side of things. I did find it strange that they only chose the heroes here, because I feel like the villains within the Dissidia franchise are some of the most interesting ones. Like the Emperor, for example. I love his playstyle, and even though I never mastered him, the fact that he could set traps and everything, if they do that in this version, I would really be interested to see, because that could really be a wonderful thing in terms of the fighting mechanics. It would be so different from everything else out there because you had your team. They could lure them into traps, and maybe that would, bring it to the next level. I also want to see what they do with the feedback they get from this beta, because again, with certain abilities being locked off and the RPG mechanics not there, some of the feedback may be, what's the word I'm looking for? Misleading. Because, again, with the ability to change up your customization, that could make a huge difference in terms of like, hey, Squall, yeah, I'm using Fated Circle, but maybe I don't want to use Fated Circle for my HP attack. Maybe there's something else that really complements the abilities that I have right now. Alright, I've gone on long enough for a first thoughts video. I will answer any questions that you guys have about the beta experience, because again, even though this is a video that I'm, producing and, putting out there, and it is my opinion, if I didn't cover something that you really want to note in this video, well, guess what? I will answer your questions in the comment section below. Again, my job is to match the game for you, and if I can answer a question that really helps you out on that, that's what this channel is for. It is a consumer advocacy channel, it is a game review channel, and it wants to match the game to you. Anyway, the next review on this channel will be Sonic Mania, which will probably come out sometime next week. I am targeting Tuesday in terms of, we do have the Labor Day weekend here, but given all the other reviews that I've done over the past month or so, and realizing that I usually predict a little bit too early, I'll hold it off until Friday in terms of, by next Friday, I will have a opinion for you guys in terms of Sonic Mania. I am also working on the Mini Ghost 5-minute review or first impressions, as well as some game design videos in the background. Anyway, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, keep on gaming.